The fitness tracker that exposed my husband's affair. 28 years of marriage. 28 years I thought I knew my husband, David, like the back of my hand. At 52, I considered myself a happy woman. My accounting firm was thriving. Our house in the Dallas suburbs was fully paid off, and our children had grown up and started families of their own. It seemed like the golden years of peaceful family life lay ahead. Everything changed on David's 55th birthday. I had been thinking for a long time about what to give him, a man who seemed to have everything he needed. His job as a manager at a construction company suited him, though in recent years he often complained about fatigue and weight gain. I decided to give him a fitness tracker. Maybe it would motivate him to focus on his health and start moving more. David reacted to the gift with an enthusiasm that surprised me. Usually, he was skeptical about newfangled gadgets, but this time he immediately put the tracker on his wrist and started studying the instructions. He installed the app on his phone and synced the device. I was pleased that the gift was so well received. For the first few weeks, David really did become more active. He did light exercises in the morning and sometimes walked around the block in the evenings. I was happy about the changes and even installed the same app on my phone so we could share results and support each other. That decision changed my life forever. A month after giving him the gift, I noticed something strange. Every Wednesday, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, David would show intense activity. The app showed he was apparently running or walking fast for an hour and a half. His heart rate was elevated, lots of calories burned. But this was odd because at that time, he was supposed to be in his office. At first, I thought it was a glitch in the app. Maybe the tracker was reading the data incorrectly, but the patterns repeated every Wednesday with surprising regularity, always from 2 to 4:30, always on the same day of the week. I decided to talk to David about it. When I asked if he had started going to the gym during lunchtime, he told me no. At most, he would walk to the nearest cafe to buy coffee. But the app clearly showed a completely different picture. Then I studied the app's features more thoroughly and discovered that I could track not only activity, but also location. The GPS tracker showed movement routes, and then I saw something that made my heart stop. Every Wednesday, David would leave his office in downtown Dallas and head to a completely different part of the city, to the Courtyard Marriott Hotel. He would stay there for exactly 2.5 hours, then return to work. My first thought was, this is impossible. The app must be glitching. The GPS must be wrong. But the data was too precise and regular for a technical error. Every Wednesday, the same pattern. Same time, same address. I couldn't concentrate at work. My thoughts kept circling around one thing. What was David doing at a hotel every Wednesday? I tried to push away the most obvious assumptions. It couldn't be. Not my David. Not after 28 years of marriage. But the doubts grew with each passing day. I started remembering little things I hadn't paid attention to before. David really had been staying late at work more often on Wednesdays. He said they had weekly meetings with contractors. He'd come home in a good mood, sometimes even bringing flowers or ice cream. I remembered how a few months ago, he suddenly started paying attention to his appearance. He bought new cologne, started changing shirts more often, even made an appointment with the dentist to whiten his teeth. At the time, I was happy about these changes, thinking my husband had simply decided to take care of himself. The following Wednesday, I couldn't stand it anymore. Around 1:30, I got in my car and drove to the Courtyard Marriott. I needed to see everything with my own eyes. The hotel was located in the business district, not far from the airport. I parked in the shopping center lot across the street and waited. At 2:10, I saw David's familiar blue Honda. My husband got out of the car, straightened his tie, and quickly entered the hotel building. My heart was beating so loudly, I was afraid people in nearby cars would hear it. I sat in that parking lot for 2 hours, watching the hotel entrance. At exactly 4:30, David came out. He looked relaxed, content. He got in his car and drove toward his office. The evidence was right there, but I still hoped for some innocent explanation. Maybe he had business meetings. Maybe he was meeting with clients in a hotel room. But who was I trying to fool? What business meetings last 2.5 hours every Wednesday in the same hotel room? I decided to act like a professional. After 25 years of running an accounting business, I had learned to gather facts methodically and thoroughly. If my marriage was falling apart, I needed to know the complete truth. The next day, I went to the hotel. I introduced myself to the front desk clerk as David Miller's wife and said I wanted to book the same room for the following Wednesday to surprise him. The young woman behind the counter was very helpful. What she told me was like a punch to the gut. Room 412 had been booked under the name David Miller every Wednesday for 8 months, a standing reservation. The client always came at the same time and left at the same time. Very punctual. Always paid cash. 8 months. For 8 months, my husband had been spending every Wednesday in a hotel room, and I hadn't suspected a thing. How could I have been so blind? The clerk asked if I wanted to leave a note or flowers in the room for his next visit. I thanked her and said I'd think about it. Walking out of the hotel, I sat in my car and broke down crying. For the first time in 8 months, I allowed myself to admit the obvious. My husband was cheating on me. But who was this woman? How did they meet? How long had this been going on? Questions swirled in my head, giving me no peace. I knew I had to learn the whole truth before taking any action. The following week, I became a private detective. I went through his phone when he was in the shower. I checked his jacket pockets. I analyzed credit card statements. But David was careful. No suspicious calls, no romantic messages. All expenses looked normal. The only thing that caught my attention was that he'd started withdrawing cash more often. $200 every week. We rarely used cash before, paying for everything with cards. But now these $200 disappeared without a trace. On Wednesday, I went back to the hotel. This time, I decided to wait and see if I could spot his companion. I parked in a different spot and settled in for the wait. At 2:10, David arrived. 5 minutes later, a white Toyota Camry pulled up to the hotel. A woman got out of the car, and I nearly passed out. It was my younger sister, Rachel. Rachel, who had been my maid of honor 28 years ago. Rachel, who came to our family dinners every weekend. Rachel, who helped me plan our 25th wedding anniversary 3 years ago. Rachel, who comforted me when I had problems with my business. Rachel, to whom I confided all my secrets. They didn't even try to hide. They met at the hotel entrance. David put his arm around her waist, and they went inside together. as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I sat in my car, unable to move. My husband's betrayal was painful, but my sister's betrayal seemed impossible. We grew up together. I helped her after her divorce 10 years ago when she was left alone with her teenage son. I gave her a job at my firm when she couldn't find decent employment. I supported her financially when times were tough. And all this time, she was sleeping with my husband. My memory began resurrecting details that now took on a completely different meaning. How Rachel always insisted on sitting next to David at the family table. How she was always the first to wish him happy birthday. How often she touched his arm during conversations. How she always defended him when I occasionally complained about little things in our marriage. But most importantly, how in recent months she had become especially attentive to me. She called often, asked about my affairs, offered help. She even insisted on helping organize David's birthday. Now I understood. It was guilt. She was taking care of me because she was betraying me. I sat in that parking lot until evening, trying to make sense of what was happening. The world I had built over 28 years had crumbled in one day, but the most terrifying realization was that I had no idea how long this had really been going on. 8 months of regular hotel meetings was just the tip of the iceberg. Who knows how long they'd been meeting before that? Maybe years? Maybe my entire marriage had been a lie? I came home at the usual time so as not to arouse suspicion. David was home, making dinner and humming some song. He looked content and relaxed, just like always on Wednesdays after his meetings. Rachel called that evening. Her voice sounded normal, warm, caring. She asked how things were going, told me about problems with her college-age son, and complained about work. I listened to her and couldn't understand how someone could lie so masterfully. How could she sound so sincere when just a few hours ago she had been with my husband? I decided not to act impulsively. My professional instincts told me I needed to gather maximum information before taking any action. If my marriage was really over, I had to protect myself financially and legally. The following weeks, I lived a double life. During the day, I played the role of an unsuspecting wife, and in the evenings, I turned into a private detective. I studied all our bank accounts, investments, insurance policies. I analyzed our family's financial situation and my business. And then I discovered things that shocked me even more than the affair itself. For the past 2 years, David had been regularly transferring money from our joint account to an account I didn't know about. $500 every month. The total amount was already $12,000. As a professional accountant, I knew such transfers couldn't go unnoticed. But somehow they had escaped my attention. After conducting a small investigation, I found out the account belonged to Rachel. So it wasn't just about sex. David was financially supporting my sister at the expense of our family budget, but that wasn't all. Digging through documents, I discovered that 6 months ago, David had taken out a $40,000 loan secured by our house, a loan I knew nothing about, even though the house was in my name and I signed all documents. Examining the signature on the documents, I realized it was forged. David had forged my signature on the loan documents. This was already a serious crime. Where had those $40,000 gone? According to bank statements, Most of the amount had gone to Rachel's account. So my husband wasn't just cheating on me with my sister, but robbing our family to support his mistress. The picture was becoming clearer and more horrifying. This wasn't a spontaneous affair. This was planned deception with financial manipulation. Maybe they were planning to push for divorce so they could divide my assets. I realized I needed professional help. I contacted a private investigator recommended by my lawyer. I told him the whole story and asked him to conduct a full investigation. The detective worked quickly and efficiently. Within a week, I had photographs confirming David and Rachel's relationship. Moreover, he found out they weren't just meeting on Wednesdays at the hotel. There were other meetings in restaurants, at Rachel's apartment, even in our own house when I wasn't there. The most shocking discovery was that Rachel was pregnant. At 45, after 10 years of being single, she was expecting a child by my husband. The detective photographed her at the gynecologist's office with a noticeably rounded belly. So the financial support wasn't just about maintaining a mistress, but also preparing for a child's birth. They were planning a future together at my expense. Now I understood why Rachel had been so attentive to me in recent months. She was studying my habits, daily routine, future plans. Maybe they were looking for the right moment to announce their relationship and start divorce proceedings. I had enough evidence to win any court case. Adultery, document forgery, real estate fraud, all of this gave me huge advantages in a divorce. But I decided to act differently. Instead of immediate confrontation, I began preparing for war. As an experienced accountant, I knew success depended on thorough preparation and the right strategy. First, I protected my business. I restructured all documents so David had no connection to it. I opened new bank accounts and transferred all savings to them. I insured the office and equipment in my name. Then I contacted the best divorce attorney in the city. We developed a strategy that would allow me not only to keep all assets, but also to recover compensation from David for the stolen money. The lawyer advised filing the police report for document forgery. This was a criminal offense that could mean real jail time for David. But I decided to use this information as leverage in negotiations. Meanwhile, I continued observing David and Rachel. The detective provided me with weekly reports on their meetings. The picture was depressing. They acted like a couple in love, planning a future together. Rachel was already 5 months pregnant. They shopped for baby items together, choosing strollers and cribs. David took her to all doctor appointments. They even rented a small apartment for the future baby. Of course, with my money. I realized I couldn't delay any longer. Rachel would give birth soon, and then the situation would become more complicated. The child would require child support, which meant part of our jointly acquired property could go toward its support. I chose a family dinner for the revelation. Every Sunday, we gathered as a family. Me, David, Rachel, my adult children with grandchildren. This was a years-long tradition that I didn't want to break, even in this situation. On the last Sunday in October, I set the table as usual. I prepared everyone's favorite dishes. Rachel came wearing a loose sweater that hid her condition, but I knew the truth. David was especially attentive to her, helped her take off her jacket, brought her a glass of water. At the table, they sat next to each other, as always. David discreetly touched her hand when passing dishes. Rachel smiled gratefully at him. My children suspected nothing, chatting cheerfully with their aunt and father. I waited until everyone finished eating and relaxed. Then I stood up and made a toast about family, about those who will always be there, and about those who choose betrayal. David and Rachel exchanged glances, but didn't react. They probably thought I was talking about someone else. My children raised their glasses, not understanding the hidden meaning of my words. Then I announced I wanted to show everyone some interesting photographs. I laid out printouts of the detectives' photos on the table. David and Rachel at the hotel entrance, their kiss in the parking lot. Rachel at the gynecologist's office with her rounded belly. Dead silence fell. My oldest son was the first to understand what was happening. David's face turned white as a sheet. Rachel covered her face with her hands. I calmly told them I knew about the 8 months of Wednesday meetings, about room 412 at the Courtyard Marriott, and that this was just what I had been able to document. David tried to interrupt me, but I continued. I explained that I knew about the $40,000 loan he had taken out by forging my signature. I knew about the monthly transfers to Rachel's account. I knew about the pregnancy. I knew everything. Rachel burst into tears. David tried to explain that it wasn't what I thought. My children sat in shock, unable to believe what was happening. I informed them that the next morning my lawyer would file divorce papers. I was demanding full restitution of all stolen funds, plus compensation for emotional damages. I gave them a choice: peaceful settlement or criminal charges for document forgery. David realized he was caught. He knew my professional abilities and understood I had all the evidence. Attempts to justify or deny the obvious were useless. Rachel continued crying, repeatedly saying she didn't want to hurt me, that it all happened by accident. But her words sounded false, even to herself. The family dinner was over. My children took the grandchildren home, not knowing what to say. David packed his things and went to Rachel's. I remained alone in the house I had built over 28 years. But for the first time in months, I felt not pain, but relief. The uncertainty was over. Now I knew the truth and could begin a new life. The divorce process took 3 months. David didn't argue with my demands, understanding the alternative would be prison. He returned all the stolen money, paid compensation, and waived claims to my property. Rachel gave birth to a girl in January. David acknowledged paternity and started paying child support. But their relationship didn't last long after my exposure. When David lost access to my money, the romance quickly evaporated. Rachel realized she had gotten involved with a man capable of betrayal and theft. If he could deceive a wife for 28 years, what would stop him from deceiving her too? They broke up when the baby was 6 months old. David was left alone, without family, without money, with the necessity of paying child support for 2 children by different women. My younger sister lost both family and financial support. Not only I stopped communicating with her, but all our relatives who learned about her role in destroying my marriage. And I, at 53, began a new life. Business was thriving. The house belonged only to me. My children supported me. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. The most surprising thing, I didn't feel hatred toward David or Rachel. The pain of betrayal gradually subsided, making room for new possibilities. I realized their affair had freed me from a relationship that had long ceased to be happy. The fitness tracker I gave my husband for his birthday became a symbol of the end of one life and the beginning of another. Technology meant to help him become healthier, instead revealed the sickness in our marriage that could no longer be cured. Looking back now, I'm grateful for that little device. Without it, I could have lived in ignorance for years, while David and Rachel planned my future behind my back. Instead, I got the chance to take control and protect myself. My advice to women who suspect infidelity: trust your instincts, but verify the facts. Don't rush into confrontation until you've gathered all the evidence. And remember, the end of a bad marriage isn't a tragedy. It's an opportunity for a new beginning. At 54, I discovered the joys of single life. I travel, meet with friends, and grow my business. Sometimes I go on dates, but I'm not rushing into serious relationships. I'm learning to be myself again, not just half of a couple. The fitness tracker story taught me an important lesson. Sometimes technology opens our eyes to things we preferred not to see. A small device on a wrist changed my entire life, and I don't regret it for a second. The most ironic part: David never did get in shape. After losing access to my money and dealing with the stress of supporting 2 children from different women, he actually gained more weight. Meanwhile, I joined a gym, hired a personal trainer, and at 54, I'm in the best shape of my life. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. And that fitness tracker, I still wear one. And now it tracks my steps toward my new life. And every step takes me further from the lies and closer to the truth I deserve.